The 1960s weren't just about hippies and Vietnam. While 2001, A Space Odyssey gets all the glory, dozens of visionary sci-fi gems were quietly revolutionizing cinema with mind-bending ideas and groundbreaking visuals. These forgotten masterpieces influenced everything from Blade Runner to Alien, yet most modern viewers have never heard of them. Ready to discover the greatest sci-fi films you never knew existed? Buckle up as we blast off into the weirdest, wildest decade of science fiction ever put on celluloid. The Day the Earth Caught Fire. 1961. Long before climate change blockbusters, this British gem showed what happens when nuclear tests knock Earth off its axis and send it spiraling toward the sun. Shot in stunning black and white with sections tinted a haunting sepia tone, the film follows two newspaper reporters investigating why London's weather has gone completely bonkers. The Thames is drying up, fog blankets the city, and temperatures are rising to unbearable levels. What makes this film extraordinary isn't just its eerily prescient environmental message, but its unflinching documentary-style realism. Director Val Guest actually filmed real riots and used genuine newspaper offices at the Daily Express to create an atmosphere so authentic you'll sweat alongside the characters. There's this incredible scene where they walk through a steam-drenched Piccadilly circus that looks like something out of Dante's Inferno, with Londoners collapsing from heat exhaustion while fire hydrants burst open in the background. The film cost a measly £200,000 to make, but looks like $1 million thanks to Guest's newspaper background and documentary techniques. Critics were floored by its technical achievements, with Variety calling it uncomfortably credible. The film ends with newspapers ready to print two different headlines: World Saved or World Doomed, and in a masterstroke of cinematic tension, we never learn which one runs. This is pre-CGI disaster filmmaking at its absolute finest, influencing everything from Children of Men to Don't Look Up. Fun fact, the real editor of the Daily Express plays himself in the film, adding another layer of documentary realism to this ahead-of-its-time masterpiece. Alphaville, 1965. Imagine noir detective fiction colliding with dystopian sci-fi, all filmed in contemporary 1960s Paris without a single special effect. That's the genius of Jean-Luc Godard's Alphaville, where trenchcoat-wearing secret agent Lemmy Caution infiltrates a city controlled by an all-powerful computer called Alpha 60. What makes Alphaville revolutionary is how Goddard creates an alien future using only what existed around him. Modernist architecture becomes cold, inhuman spaces. Corporate headquarters transform into sinister government buildings. Even ordinary light switches and vending machines feel menacing in this world where emotion is outlawed and people who cry when reading poetry are executed. The film's villain, Alpha 60, speaks in a guttural, rasping voice created by an actor with a vocal cord disorder, making for one of cinema's most unsettling artificial intelligences decades before HAL 9000. Goddard shoots the Paris of 1965 at night and from strange angles, transforming the City of Light into something completely alien. There's a brilliant sequence where Caution must answer impossible philosophical riddles to stay alive, creating tension with nothing but words and close-ups. Hollywood Reporter called it the most brilliant visual work Goddard has done, while filmmaker Ridley Scott cited it as a major influence on Blade Runner's visual aesthetic. Without a single ray gun or robot costume, Alphaville creates a more convincing dystopia than films with 1,000 times its budget. Seconds, 1966. Before The Matrix or Eternal Sunshine offered escape from mundane reality, Seconds was traumatizing audiences with the dark side of reinvention. Directed by John Frankenheimer, this paranoid nightmare stars Rock Hudson in his only truly great dramatic role as a man who's undergone complete physical transformation through a shadowy organization that offers wealthy clients rebirth. The film opens with some of the most disorienting cinematography ever put on screen. Legendary cameraman James Wong Howe used fisheye lenses, bizarre angles, and distorted perspectives to create a constant sense of unease. There's a cosmetic surgery sequence so grotesque that audience members reportedly fainted during early screenings, with close-ups of skin being stretched and reshaped that still shock today. What begins as a fantasy about escaping your boring life spirals into an existential horror story about the impossibility of outrunning your true self. Hudson's performance shocked audiences who knew him only from light romantic comedies, and the film's relentless psychological horror was miles away from typical 1960s studio fare. The studio expected a conventional thriller and got an art house horror film instead. Paramount was so baffled they buried it, but Seconds found a second life when the Criterion Collection recognized its genius. Director Darren Aronofsky called it way ahead of its time, while it's regularly cited as a major influence on David Fincher's visual style. The film's final scene, where Hudson realizes the true nature of the organization's promises, remains one of cinema's most chilling endings. This is the kind of film that will have you questioning your own life choices for weeks after watching. Fantastic Planet, 1973. Although technically from 1973, this French-Czech animated masterpiece began production in the 1960s before Soviet tanks rolled into Prague and disrupted filming. Imagine if Pink Floyd and Salvador Dali collaborated on an animated film about human-like creatures kept as pets by giant blue aliens. That's Fantastic Planet in a nutshell. On the distant world of Igam, tiny humans called Oms are kept as playthings by the towering drags. When an Om named Terror escapes with advanced drag knowledge, a revolution begins. The film's surreal animation style looks like nothing else before or since, with creatures that seem pulled from fever dreams, meditation-induced drogs whose heads detach and float into space, plants that transform into geometric patterns, and bizarre animals that defy biological classification. What's most extraordinary is how the film works as both trippy visual experience and powerful political allegory about Soviet occupation. Director René Laloux used cutout animation techniques that allowed the film to be produced in exile after the Prague Spring was crushed. There's this mind-blowing sequence where the Drogs engage in cosmic meditation, their disembodied heads floating through space and merging with strange entities, all created using nothing but paper cutouts and ingenious camera work. Critics recognized its boundary-pushing approach immediately, awarding it the Special Jury Prize at Cannes. Its influence extends from Adult Swim to Björk music videos, while filmmakers like David Cronenberg and Guillermo del Toro cite it as a major inspiration for their creature designs. The film remains a testament to how animation can create worlds impossible in live action, especially on limited budgets. The 10th Victim, 1965. Years before The Hunger Games or Battle Royale, this stylish Italian sci-fi satire imagined a future where violence is channeled into The Big Hunt, a government-sponsored assassination game where hunters and victims take turns stalking each other for fame and fortune. Starring the impossibly gorgeous Ursula Andress and Marcello Mastroianni, The 10th Victim drips with 1960s Euro cool. Think mod fashions, pop art interiors, and jazz soundtracks. In the film's most iconic scene, Andress performs a striptease wearing a bullet-firing bra that kills her target in a nightclub shaped like a giant ear. Yes, really. This outrageous moment inspired Austin Powers' Fembot sequence decades later. Director Elio Petri creates a world where murder is commercialized, with killing sponsored by products like Ming Tea. There's this brilliantly satirical scene where Mastroianni negotiates with an American TV producer to have his potential murder broadcast live with commercial breaks. The satire still cuts deep today as reality TV and social media have made celebrities of people famous for nothing more than their public personas. Quentin Tarantino borrowed heavily from the film's aesthetic for Kill Bill, while its premise clearly influenced everything from The Running Man to Squid Game. Despite its predictive power, most audiences today have never heard of this mod masterpiece that saw our celebrity-obsessed, violence-as-entertainment culture coming decades in advance. The Face of Another, 1966. Years before Face Off explored identity through facial transplantation, this Japanese psychological thriller was diving deep into the existential implications of wearing someone else's face. Directed by Hiroshi Teshigahara, the film follows a businessman whose face is horrifically scarred in an industrial accident. A psychiatrist creates a perfect mask for him modeled after a stranger's face, leading to a complete transformation of his identity and behavior. The visual style is absolutely stunning. Stark black and white cinematography mixed with surrealist architectural spaces. The mask itself is a remarkable practical effect, assembled piece by piece in a sequence that influenced everything from Westworld to Ex Machina in its clinical depiction of artificial humanity being constructed. What elevates the film beyond body horror is its philosophical depth. It asks profound questions about how much our faces determine who we are and how others perceive us. There's a parallel storyline about a young woman with facial burns that creates a devastating commentary on beauty standards and social ostracism. The New York Times called it a thoughtful, provocative film handled with delicacy and force, while its influence can be seen in the work of filmmakers from David Cronenberg to Jordan Peele. In an age of Instagram filters and digital self-manipulation, The Face of Another's meditation on artificial identity feels more relevant than ever. The Damned, 1963. Not to be confused with the Visconti film of the same name, this British sci-fi horror hybrid from director Joseph Losey asks a chilling Cold War question. Is it ethical to prepare children to survive nuclear apocalypse if it means robbing them of their humanity in the process? The film centers on a secret government facility where 9 children, all radioactive from birth, are being raised in isolation as humanity's post-nuclear insurance policy. Kept in a freezing cold environment to stay alive, these pale, emotionless children communicate telepathically and exhibit frightening intelligence. When outsiders discover the facility, the children's touch proves lethal, their radioactive bodies instantly condemning normal humans to radiation sickness. Shot in stark black and white along the decaying British coastline, the film's atmosphere of dread and moral ambiguity was too disturbing for audiences of its time. There's a harrowing scene where one of the children reaches out to touch an intruder, not out of malice, but curiosity, causing agonizing death through radiation poisoning. The studio shelved it for nearly 2 years before releasing a heavily cut version that bombed at the box office. Filmmaker Oliver Stone called it criminally overlooked, while its influence can be seen in everything from Stranger Things to Akira. The image of the cold, telepathic children in their sterile underground bunker remains one of sci-fi cinema's most disturbing visions of humanity's possible future. So which of these forgotten classics caught your attention? Drop a comment below with the title you're most excited to track down. And here's a question to spark debate. Has modern sci-fi, with all its CGI and massive budgets, actually lost the creativity and philosophical depth these 60s gems delivered with nothing but imagination and practical effects? Subscribe now for more deep dives into cinema's hidden treasures, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming look at forgotten horror films that changed the genre forever.